was asked, who do I use as a supplier, or what is my supplier? Because on some of my videos, you see that the boxes and everything like that fit together. Long story short, I've gone through a couple suppliers now until I finally found one where the quality makes it simple to put together. Once again, you don't have to. Of course, the better the quality, you usually end up paying a little bit more. I'm going to show you a little tip that I use in order to put these boxes together a little bit easier. So I try to do a pre-fit, and as I do a pre-fit, I'll go around and just figure out where they're at, and I'll mark them. So I'll mark one side A, the other side B, C, and D type things so that they fit. Now, basically the reason these things won't fit is because they use multiple different saws or different jigs in order to do these. So there's some big commercial units where you just put this in, you pull the handle down, and it'll cut all of your dovetails and stuff like that in there for you. I suspect that's what a lot of the big suppliers do with these. Some of the other suppliers, I mean, you could do it yourself where you can move it over and you can do it on a table saw and you can rip these out with a dado. But I'm pretty sure that they use a saw. But the long and the short of it is it only has to be off a tiny, tiny bit, and then they don't line up. So if you go ahead and you do a test fit, and you see which ones don't fit, and they're not going to, because all the time, depending as to where they are. So here I have a case where on this end I did a test fit, and it fits fairly well. All the joints, everything like that, fit pretty good. But if I try to fit this other side on, it just plain and simply will not go. So here's what I do. Once again, marking it all, so I started down here, I marked this side A, this side B, so I think you can see I have B on it. I have a corresponding B on this one. And it could be the twist of the boards, it could be the spacing. But what I'll do is I will figure out where the board fits the best. Mark it, B on both, and then, I don't know if you can see it here, but where it overlaps, what I'll do is I'll mark the inside of those, and basically that's what I'm going to take off. Don't need any saws, don't need any fancy equipment. I do it just with an X-Acto knife. So basically once you have those marked, all I'm going to do is I'm going to go on the inside, I'm going to make a cut on the both of them, and then I'm going to put the knife on here and I'm going to take off just a tiny, tiny bit. And because it goes with the grain of the wood, you see how that pops right off? The chip will come right out, and now all of a sudden it's easy to make the fits. So we do the same thing on the next one. And you can take off as much or as little. I'd recommend taking off as little as you could. Doing this a few different times, because then what happens, if you take off too much, you can't put it back on. But you can see how if I do that, all of a sudden, that's an easy fit. We can do the same thing on the other side, figure out which side's going to fit the best. We're going to mark the ones that don't. And the same thing again. I'm just going to run my knife down the inside, and then I'm just going to take off just what I need. I'll show you how little I can take off. Like I can take off just a sliver, right? Very, very fine sliver. I didn't quite take it off straight. Almost shave it out. And once again, you're better off to take off a little less than too much, but you see how easy that pops out. And then let's try it again. So B, we know, you see how easy that one slid in there now? And just like that, you have a nice tight fit. I hope that tip helps you. Let me show you another one. So another question that some of my viewers out there had is, what tools do I use? So I did go over on one of my very first builds, some of the tools and stuff that I used. But the bottom line is use what you've got. So it makes no difference whether you're putting this together with some of the tools that I've got here, or if you're putting it together with hammer and nails. Hammer and nails work just as fine. A screw driver and some screws work just as great. as everybody's seen, I use a brad nailer quite a bit. So once again, use what you have. One of the biggest tools I think I have in everything that I use is glue. Use a good wood glue. If you don't get it nailed together quite right or screwed together quite right, as long as you've got it glued really good. I use Tight Bond premium wood glue. So this is an interior exterior glue. I find it works really, really good. As long as you're using a good interior exterior wood glue, that'll work as well. A square. You see me using a square on just about every project I have. The reason being is if my boxes are all the same dimensions and they're square, it makes no difference where they stack up. They're going to fit. So I am always trying to make sure that my boxes are square on all the corners. And of course, you guys have seen me use these clamps quite often. So they clamp everything in to make a perfect 90. And they're not a lot of money. I think they were like $2 or $3 at Home Depot. This is a Bessie brand, but they work great. And you know what? The combination of the two of these, it's pretty hard to go wrong. You see me with the pencil all the time? Make sure you're marking everything out really good. Pencil's going to sand off really, really easy. And yeah, I think every household has one of those. Question I was asked is what do I use for sanders? So my boxes, they're all in my yard. So I like them to look nice, be nice. They're nice and smooth and all sanded. I'll hit them all with a belt sander at first, but you don't have to. Once again, this is just what I do. So I'll hit them with like a 120 grit sandpaper or something like that, and then I'll just finish them off with a palm sander. You know, just something to take the edges and the corners off. You see me use a hand sander quite a bit. It just takes the slivers and everything off the corners, so you don't end up with those in your hands when you're building them. And then of course, showed you in one of the tips the knife. So always make sure that your knife is sharp. Don't press on them extra hard. If the blade gets dull, change it out. In my experience, when your knife gets dull, you start pushing a little bit harder, and that's usually when you end up cutting yourself. So always make sure you've got extra blades on hand. Clamps. I use all sorts of clamps. So you've seen me use these quite a bit. They work great. You can adjust them. You know, it pulls your boxes and everything like that. It's all in nice and tight. However, I did just buy these. So these I think are a much better clamp. And once again, you don't have to. Some of my boxes I put together with Herc straps. Some of them I just use screws to pull them together. But these are very nice. And I've changed it out. So normally you'd get steel pipe that these would slide on. So these just slide back and forth on the steel pipe. I've actually changed it out to aluminum pipe, and I find they're just quite a bit lighter. These are really, really nice. They come in 1/2 inch pipe size and 3/4 inch pipe size, I do believe. So those are some of the tools I use, but really use what you have. You don't have to go and spend a bunch of money. Hammer and nails works great.